Hi, this is John with the Fossil Channel, and today I'm going to go over my red mono dragons deck. Starting out, I have 19 mountains here, and just basic land. Being a mono red deck, you need a lot of mountains in here. Quite essential. Next up, we have 2 ghost quarters. I like this card because I ran out of strip mines to use in my deck, and I don't want to use wasteland necessarily because it can't target basic lands. This can actually hit basic lands if I need to for any reason. But yeah, it's just a good, insurance policy against Maze of Ith or some other annoying lands like Caracas, or Gaia's Cradle, or Tolarian Academy. So that's what I use Ghost Quarter for, and what most people would use it for. Or if somebody has a multicolor land and they're relying on that, you can kind of take it out with this. So that's Ghost Quarter. I have Hammerheim, which is my next land here. And Hammerheim is a legendary land. It makes 1 red, mana to mana pool. Or you can tap it and remove all land walking ability from target creature until end of turn. So that can be useful if you're fighting against land walking. And the only drawback to this is that it's not a mountain, and that it can be killed off by wasteland or Blood Moon doesn't really affect it that much because it makes red mana. So really, it's just the wastelanding that can affect this card. Decent card from the Legend set, Hammerheim. I always put it in most of my casual red decks. Next up is Shinkara, the Blood-Soaked Keep. This land is also legendary. It makes red mana, and its second ability is you tap 1 red, and you tap this land, and it gives target legendary creature first strike until end of turn. So I don't have too many legendary creatures in this deck, but sometimes when I'm playing two-headed giant casual, like for kitchen table magic, I can give my partner's creature first strike if they have a legendary creature out, if they need help. So it's a little bit of a combat thing. I find that most people usually ignore this card here until it comes time for combat, and then that's when the surprise happens. So that's the lands. I have 23 in total. I'm going to go over artifacts now. I have Soul Ring. It's 1 colorless, or 1 of any kind. And you tap it, add 2 colors mana to your mana pool. Pretty basic. It's awesome card. Next card is Mana Volt, 1 of any color. Tap it to add 3 colors mana to your mana pool. This won't untap during your untap step as normal, but you could pay 4 mana during your upkeep to untap this, so you don't take the penalty, which is 1 point of damage during your turn when it's not untapped. So that's Mana Volt. Quite fast acceleration for a Dragons deck, being that Dragons are pretty expensive like Angels. Next card is Chromatic Lantern. This is not as necessary in this deck. I used to run a little bit more colorless land base, so it helped out with the color fixing, but I digress. I didn't have another choice to put in this slot for Mana Accelerator artifact, so I have Chromatic Lantern here. It's 3 mana, and it gives my lands the ability, lands I control have add 1 mana of any color to my mana pool, and then I can tap this and add 1 mana of any color to my mana pool as well. So that's Chromatic Lantern. Extremely powerful card in the right multicolored deck. That's where it really starts to shine. Next card is a classic I always include in most of my casual decks. It's Nevin Narao's Disc. 4 mana, artifact. Comes into play tapped. When you untap it next turn, or if you can untap it, same turn it comes into play, you can pay 1, tap it again, and destroy all creatures, enchantments, and artifacts in play, including this disc itself. I run a few combos with this in my Angel deck and a couple of my casual decks, but it's sort of like a catch-all kind of card, so that's why I use it. It does get past pesky hexproof items or shroud items, and it can wipe the table of tokens. I really enjoy this card. It's been one of my favorite board sweepers, or as I like to call it, street sweeper, for a number of years. Nevin Narao's Disc. Now we're coming up to the instances, and I have everybody's favorite, a pair of lightning bolts, or not pair, but rather a playset. So lightning bolt, classic red spell, must have in the red deck. It's just a staple. 1 red mana, instant 3 damage to any target creature or player. So that's extremely valuable to have. So that's a lightning bolt. Now we're coming up to some more interesting choices of cards. For this deck, I wanted a more punch to it, so I went with Incinerates as well for the ability to kill a creature and so that it doesn't get regenerated. So it's 1 red, 1 of any color, and it's an instant. Deals 3 damage like lightning bolt. However, if a creature dies this way, it can't be regenerated. Or even better on this card, it says a creature dealt damage this way can't be regenerated this turn. So even if you don't kill the creature, and your partner does in 2-Headed Giant, or if you play a lightning bolt after this card, it'll still kill a creature if it takes any sort of amount of damage from this spell. So that's the interesting part with Incinerate, and I have a play set of these in the deck. Next card is sort of a iffy card. It works on some levels with the Mana Vault, Chromatic Lantern, and Soul Ring, in that I can really sort of disperse the targeting of this, and I mainly bought it and got it for the deck because it's an instant. Otherwise, it's a subpar spell. Even so, with all those nice abilities on it, this is Comet Storm. It's 2 red and X. So what that means is red, and then you can pay a multi-kicker according to this card. It says multi-kicker 1. You may pay an additional 1 of any color any number of times as you cast the spell. Choose target creature or player, then choose another target creature or player for each time Comet Storm was kicked. Comet Storm deals X damage to each of them. So if I pay, say, a total of 5 mana, and I take the 5 mana and I kick it twice. So really what I'm paying is 2 for the casting, 1 point for the X, and then 2 kicking it. That would give me 3 targets for 1 point of damage. That's how it spreads out. Now if I did, let's say I have 8 mana. So 2 would go to red here, and then if I did, say, 4 for the X, for the damage part, and then I kicked it another 2 times, that means I would do 4 damage for each target. So you can kind of, the more mana you dump into this and the more times you kick it, the more efficient it becomes at dealing with multiple targets if you have mana. Now, 8 mana is a lot of mana to really start making this effective, so it's kind of an iffy card in the deck. So I have it mainly for the instant speed, so, and the multi-kicker. So I find that's kind of useful in this deck. I've been playing around with it. I like it. It's not a bad instant. So next card is a classic in a Dragons only deck, and the reason being is that it's Sarkhan's Triumph. And this card allows you to search your library for a dragon creature card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library. So obviously I'm running Dragon's deck. Sarkhan's Triumph, which is 1 red and 2 of any color, would make sense. So this is basically going to be doubling up any dragons that I'm going to be dropping out. And at a 3 mana cost tutor effect, it's not the best card, but it's an instant, which is kind of nice to have because I can do this at the end of an opponent's turn and fake them out with open mana, so they might think I might burn out their creatures. So if they don't put out a creature, then I can use this and then get whatever card I want to set up for the next turn. Now I can cast this on turn 2 with the Soul Ring or Mana Vault or Chromatic, well, not Chromatic Lantern, but just those 2 other cards. So I can start searching for an answer relatively early in the game and pretty fast. So that's Sarkhan's Triumph. Now we're coming up to sorceries. I have a pair of Get2 Fire. Now Get2 Fire is a strange sorcery to have in a red deck. It's not the best. There's plenty of other better sorceries to be using in a red deck. But being as this is kitchen top table magic, We're not going to be trying that hard, although we are trying. The reason why I have Get Too Fire in here is I can play it as an instant, much like Comet Storm. It's not as efficient, but the difference between this and Comet Storm is the red mana used to cast it. I only need 1 red mana and X, so I can use it very early on, like turn 2, if I need to just get rid of a 1 mana creature cost card. And that's generally what I'm doing with this card. So I can save my Incinerates and my Lightning Bolts for more combat tricks and more of ambushing the other players. So the idea is I can pitch this and get rid of it for 1 red and X. If I ever needed it to be an instant, it can be, but obviously I have to pay more mana into it. So it does extend its functionality when I'm fighting certain control decks. If I have to wait to get that extra burn damage in, I can do it. It's a flexible card in this deck, and that's why I have it. Are there better choices? Yes. I don't have access to the better cards. This is what I have for now, so this is what I'm using. So let's Get Too Far. It's a fun card to pull out, and people look at it and they question, like, are you really using that in a red deck? So yeah, I am definitely using that in my red deck. Next card I have is a much better card in terms of its efficiency. It's called Red Sun Zenith, and I'm using a pair in this deck, in the main deck anyway. I have another pair in the sideboard. So it's just like Get Too Fire in that you pay 1 red and X. However, it's a sorcery, and it doesn't have an ability to be played as an instant. What it does instead is, if it deals X damage to target creature or player, if a creature dealt damage this way would be put into the graveyard this turn, exile it instead. Then shuffle Sun Zenith into its owner's library. So I can get a reusable burn card, removal card each time with this if it's successfully cast and resolved, and if it does hit the graveyard. So not only can I remove creatures from the game, I can have a renewable red source of damage. Compared to Get Too Fire, which is a fire once and then forget about it. But the benefit of Get Too Fire, again, is paying the 2 extra mana to cast it as an instant as opposed to a sorcery. So I like having a little bit of a flexible card slot with my red burn spells. So those are the spells of the deck, the burn spells. Now here come the dragons, the main part everybody wants to see. I'm running right now a play set for Thunderbreak Regent. This card's a fun card because your dragons are going to be targeted. It costs 2 red mana and 2 of any kind. And then it's flying 4/4. And whenever a dragon you control becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, Thunderbreak Regent deals 3 damage to that player. So this card, if I have more than 1 out, it starts stacking up with the damage that someone's going to take to either Lightning Bolt, Swords of Plowshare, or tap or whatever to get rid of my card. So I'm going to be pushing the damage even when the card dies. So it kind of makes the 2-for-1ing or the effect of losing my big heavy hitters come at a price, which is nice. So that is Thunderbreak Regent. It has worked successfully in the games for me. I have it in this deck for those reasons, and the reason that it's a 4 mana casting cost, flying 4/4. That is the main thing about Thunderbreak Regent. So that's why I'm using it in the deck. It's an efficient body with an evasive ability for its cost. Next card is also a very good card for its body and evasive mechanic. It's Scourge of Valkyros. This one is 5 mana. So it's 3 red and 2 of any kind. It's a flying 4/4, so it about evens out. However, whenever this card or another dragon enters the battlefield under my control, it deals X damage to target creature or player, where X is the number of dragons I control. So you can see that this, when I start stacking out, especially in an all-dragon deck, all the creatures in this deck are dragons, this starts adding up and it'll trigger multiple times. So if I have Thunderbreak Regent, I plop it into play, and this is out already for Scourge. It's going to do 2 damage, because it's going to count this as a creature when it resolves. Now, if I play another Scourge and play with these two out, not only is this going to do 3 damage, because it's going to count all 3 individually, 3 dragons for this to trigger, 3 dragons for this to trigger. So it pretty much really pushes the damage through. And I can control the board in certain ways. So that is Scourge Valkyries. A lot of fun little tricks with this dragon deck. So that is Scourge Valkyries. I have 4 of them. And the last ability on it is you tap 1 red, and it gets +1/+0 on the turn. So it's like a fire breathing ability. So that's kind of nice to get that extra damage in. It's a typical traditional dragon ability. Next up, I have a playset of Storm Breath, dragons. Really kick-ass card. 5 mana, 2 red, 3 of any colors. Flying, haste, protection from white, 4/4. Its second ability is that it has monstrosity. 2 red and 5 of any color. Monstrosity 3. If this creature isn't monstrous, put 3 +1/+1 counters on it and it becomes monstrous. When it becomes monstrous, it deals damage to each opponent, equal to the number of cards in that player's hand. So this can, obviously it's a great body, and it fights another huge creature in this card slot, which is Baneslayer, which is kind of interesting in that you can block Baneslayer with this, and Baneslayer can't block this because it has protection from white. And this won't take damage because of the protection from white, which is interesting. It's a great card. It's got haste. So what I'll do is I'll play Scourge on my turn 5. And then turn 6, I'll play this card, trigger the Scourge, and I'll have haste, and I have 2 guys flying in there on turn 6, making for a quick beatdown. So this is a really powerful card. It's probably the best all-star MVP of the deck. That being said, it does draw a lot of hate. Once it comes down to the table, people are looking to kill me right away. So Storm Breath Dragon, easily one of the best dragon cards out there. Next up, I have a play set of Hellkite, or Steel Hellkites. This is 6 of any color to cast. Artifact creature dragon. Flying, 5/5. So it's a decent body. It evens out. Looking at the abilities, it's 2 of any color. Steel Hellkite gets +1/+0 until end of turn. X. Destroy each non-land permanent with converted mana cost X, whose controller was dealt damage by Steel Hellkite this turn. Activate this ability only once each turn. So this is kind of like a Pernicious Deed effect, and similar to the Mineral's Disc, in that I can board wipe enemy permanents with this card. So it's an answer to annoying enchantments or artifacts and creatures. So just basically any permanent on the table. So the idea is to get it to connect. That's the trick. In use, I have used its ability before to destroy elves, let's say, or other goblins and whatnot in my casual games. It's extremely fun to get it to go off, and having a playset increases the chance of drawing this card, which is fun to use. So that's Steel Hellkite, really flexible dragon. Last card in the deck I have, of the main deck, is Sarkon the Dragon Speaker. It's 2 red and 3 of any color. Planeswalker. Has 4 loyalty counters on it. You add a loyalty counter, and until end of turn, this card becomes a legendary 4/4 red dragon creature with flying, indestructible, and haste. Take 3 loyalty counters off, -3. Sarkon the Dragon Speaker deals 4 damage to target creature. -6 loyalty counters. You get an emblem at the beginning of your draw step. Draw 2 additional cards, and at the beginning of your end step, discard your hand. So I'm using this card for its dragon ability, really. That's all I'm using it for. And as a decoy from my main life total. So I don't run a lot of life gain in this deck. So I have to close the deal quickly, or find some other way to prolong keeping my life up, and this draws a lot of hate when it comes down. So that's the idea behind this card. And if it doesn't get hit or beat up, it's a beat stick. It's indestructible and it's a dragon. And it fits the theme very, very well with this deck. So that's the only Planeswalker I'm running. Now I'm going to go to the sideboard, which is always a work in progress. So I'm going to start off with some instances that I have here. It's much like the old fork. This card is called Reverberate. It's 2 red. It's an instant. And you copy target instant or sorcery spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. So extremely flexible. It's designed to be comparable to other blue spells that, I forget what the name of the other blue spell, but it does the same thing, but it's 2 blue instead of 2 red. So you can theoretically copy someone's counterspell who's counterspelling your spell, put this on a stack, counter their counterspell, and then you can get a spell through. Or if they do something really devastating, you can do it back to them. So Reverberate just has a huge list of things that it can be flexible for. So I like running 2 in this deck to surprise people. Next up is Banefire. If I'm playing blue and I have more than enough mana to get this off to use its ability, it becomes that much more efficient for me. It's much like Get to Fire and Red Sun Zenith in that it costs 1 red and X of any color. And X is basically whatever mana you put afterwards, and it deals that much damage. So it deals X damage to target creature or player. If X is more than 5, Banefire can't be countered by spells or abilities, and the damage can't be prevented. So that's the main appeal of this card. So it's extremely useful against blue decks. I have a pair of dragons here. These are Flame Blast dragons. They're 2 red and full colorless, or any color. They're flying 5/5, so it's a decent body for its casting cost. Whenever Flame Blast dragon attacks, you may pay 1 red and X. If you do, Flame Blast dragon deals X damage to target creature or player. So again, this can function as pushing the extra damage through, and it doesn't have to connect necessarily. So you can attack knowing you can destroy a creature as you attack with this card. So the idea is to attack with it and use the extra mana that you have out. And in theory, you would have 6 or more mana to use this card with by the time you do that. So this can be really effective at taking out individual targets, and it helps with the spot removal. So I sometimes switch this in place of maybe a couple of the Steel Hellkites in case I need to push extra damage through in the second game. Extremely fun for countertop table Magic games, and it's not the best card, but it's fun to use in an all-dragon deck. I enjoy it, so that's why I have a pair in here. Next card is a card that I, in practice, don't use that much, but when I have used it, it has worked. It's Hellkite Tyrant. I have a pair of these in here, and it is 2 red and 4 of any color. It's flying and trample, 6/5. So it's got a better than average efficiency for its body and what it does. Its other abilities are, whenever Hellkite Tyrant deals combat damage to a player, gain control of an artifact, or of all artifacts rather, that player controls. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 20 or more artifacts, you win the game. So that's an alternate win con with this dragon here. And for the price of 6 mana, it's not bad. It's actually a really good heavy hitter for what it does. And its extra ability is just gravy on top of it. So if you're playing against a deck that uses a lot of artifacts, which I sometimes do in casual Magic, I'll throw this guy into the main deck and take out a couple other cards. And I can control them next games. And it's quite fun using this card if it works. Now in practice, I haven't been able to connect it that much. But there have been some games where it has, and it just devastates. So that's Hellkite Tyrant. Fun card. Next up is another pair of Red Sun Zenith. In case I want to swap out the Get to Fire and have a little bit more redundancy and recycling effects in my deck, I would throw that in there instead. And if I needed to exile other creature cards on the table, that's why I have 2 pair in the sideboard. So I can swap out the instances or the X damage spells as needed. Sometimes the Meteor Fires aren't doing the trick, so I'll swap that out with these. Or it gives me a lot of options to change up the deck and how I want it to play. So Red Sun Zenith, standard typical card. Next up is Smash to Smithereens. One red, one colorless. Instant, destroy target artifact. Smash to Smithereens deals 3 damage to that artifact's controller. Extremely useful if you're looking to push damage. I used to have Shatter, which is strictly worse than this card in almost all cases. And this is just a better upgrade. So I upgraded to these to get the extra bonus of the damage in. So that's Smash to Smithereens. Now I have Elixir of Immortality as a single card in here. Sometimes I'm fighting against Mill, which is a popular casual deck to fight against. And this is sort of my answer to it. Although it's not really going to matter too much with this deck, as this is the only Graveyard Recursion card I have in here. It's mainly to gain the life. Sometimes I find that I need to be better in long game, or if I have to push the long game, I'll put this in here. It's a fun card to have. I've always played my casual Magic decks with Feldon's Cane, which is similar. So they both work the same. They're both 1 mana cost. This one you pay 2, you tap it, you gain 5 life. You shuffle this and your graveyard into Owner's Library. Feldon's Cane is 1 mana, much like this, but comes into play. You can just tap it, put your graveyard into your library, and then the Feldon's Cane will get removed. This doesn't get removed. It gets shuffled into your library. So it has the ability to be reused again, which is what I like about it. The only trade-off is you have to have 2 mana open to use it if you want to use it right away, or it'll be sitting on the board and it could get removed before you use it. Last is 3 more Nivernal's Discs. Much like the one I have in the main board, sometimes I like to play the long game and control what's on the board, and having 4 of these in there can really mess up aggro decks if I can get a chance to get these off. I don't have Wrath of Gods, so this kind of, in some ways, takes that place. I suppose I can run Pyroclasm in here for just creatures, but I wanted to be able to catch more than just creatures with this, and higher health creatures with better toughness. So this can work pretty well. So that's why I got 3 in here for the drawing on it. And that's my dragon deck. And that's the end of the sideboard there. I have a lot of fun playing this deck. It's not the best deck in terms of winning, but it is quite a lot of fun, especially when you play theme games with your friends. Sometimes we like to do vampires and elves versus angels and demons, or something of that sort, or pirates and dragons versus Eldrazi. Well, Eldrazi is not that casual, but you get the idea. Playing creature types versus creature types, it's a lot of fun. It's not like my legacy decks, for sure, and other competitive decks, but that's the casual magic deck that I have, the Dragons one. I'm John with the Fossil Channel. Thanks for watching.